current and former residents of Herculaneum. With us today are Herb Marler, class of 1945, Wally Huddleson, class of 1949, and Richard Caby, of class of 1941. And we'll get started.
Are you a resident of Herculaneum at the present
I'm not.
time?
No.
I am.
How long have you been a resident?
Since 1933, about 70-some years.
Wow. How long haven't you lived in? How long did you live in Herky?
Well, in 1934 or 5, I was only about 4 or 5 years old, and lived down there on Main Street for a few months, and then up on Hill Street, and then I moved to Riverside over at Caby.
I moved to Herky about fall of 1950. Then I moved to Festus in March of 1990.
What are the names of your parents?
Pardon?
What are the names of your parents?
My dad's name was Rainey, and my mother's name was Augusta.
Were they from Herky?
No. They were from the Lead Belt where they moved here.
Okay. Do you have any brothers or sisters?
Yeah.
What are their names?
What are their names of my brothers and sisters?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Let's see. My oldest brother was Lloyd. He's deceased, and my next one was Arnold, then me, and then Robert. He's deceased, and my sister Marilyn. She's deceased, and my sister Carol. Those were the ones.
Okay. Do you have any children or grandchildren that went to Herky?
Yeah, all of them did. All my kids went here.
Okay. And what are your parents' names?
My parents' name was Tommy Huddleston. My Mildred Caby was my mother. Lived in Riverside over there. And my kids went to school here at Herculaneum. Jim and Sherry Horn. Sherry Horn went to school here. Was Huddleston then. And then my grandkids went to school here. John Horn, Mark Horn, and David Horn. They all went to school here. And I think Dave's the only one still living in Herky.
My parents were Elmer Caby and Pauline Caby. And they didn't live in Herculaneum. They lived over Riverside. That's over where the Dow Chemical plant is now. And I had a sister and a brother, 4 brothers. They were Henry, Mildred, Harold, Bill, Richard, and youngest brother Stanley. And none of them are living now.
Okay, I had 3 sisters, Betty Huddleston, Betty Marler, and Alice Reed, and Marilyn Southern. And Betty's the only one that's deceased.
So how many generations of your family have lived in Herculaneum?
3. I think it was 3. Yeah.
My grandparents lived here, and Huddleston's.
What about you, Richard?
Just one generation. My wife and I just lived here in Herculaneum.
Where in Herky did you live, like around town, with different places of the town?
I first started in the cafeteria down got run. I was St. Joe Lead Company then. Then after that, worked in Festus in a shoe factory. And then I came back to Herky and worked in the smelter for 42 years.
First time I lived in Herky was right next to St. Joe Lead there, at the where the fence there, the usual Russian garage, they called it, well, behind it. And then over here on Hill Street, and then my mother built a house up here on Short Street, or Long Street, right across from where the school built that house up here on the corner. And we lived there until, I lived there about 5 months, something like that, and Uncle Sam drafted me and put me in the service.
I had 2 children that attended school here in Herculaneum. My daughter attended Assumption School, Catholic school, and my son, he went to Assumption School. All but his 7th year, he was in the Herky, attended a year here in Herky. And then his 9th year, he went to St. Pius, and then he spent the rest of his 3 years here in Herculaneum. And we always lived on Hill Street. And when we lived there, we had 3 different addresses. We never moved. the Improvement Association went through and changed all the numbers. And then when we got the rural route from Festus, the post office came in and changed all the numbers. So we had 3 addresses, and I never could understand how I'd be a rural route on a rural route from Festus when I lived in Herky, but I was. And evidently, I think they were servicing part of Golf Course Road that goes to Festus. That's the old Golf Course Road, that's what we used to call it. And they served some of them because they weren't in the Herculaneum district. And they served them. And then they decided that we couldn't have a house-to-house delivery. It had to be a rural route. So we had to put up a mailbox in front of our house, and they delivered the mail there. So I had 3 different addresses but stayed in the same house.
So Herb, did you or any of your family members work in Herculaneum?
Any families?
You or your family members?
Did you work in Herculaneum?
Yeah, I worked
Did you? Any of your family?
Yeah, my dad worked there. My brothers worked there. We all had a shot at it, you know.
Then my grandfather worked at St. Joe Lead, Huddleston, and I worked there at St. Joe for about 1.5 years, something like that.
What about you, Richard?
My brother Harold worked at St. Joe. He worked practically his whole working life, I think, there at St. Joe. And
See, Richard and I that's my uncle.
So do you remember the wages? What did you make when you went there or worked there?
I can't hear you.
The wages.
The wages?
Yes.
When I first started, I worked for $6.93 a day. And I was an apprentice. And then it went up from there. Went up to first class. And
I don't remember what the wages were when I went to work there.
Do you?
I never worked in Herky.
Did you or any of your family members own or operate a business in Herky?
No, I don't think so.
No, he didn't either.
No, we didn't operate any.
Did you attend elementary school in Herky?
Yes, I did.
Do you recall any of your teachers, principals, etc.?
I can recall a couple of them's names. One of them, my first grade teacher was named Bryant, and my third grade teacher's name was Porchy. I think that's about all I can remember of the teachers.
I went to
There was
first,
my fifth grade teacher was named Toomey, I think, yeah.
So, do you recall any special events while you were in elementary school?
Special events, no, not necessarily. Just,
They can be local or national.
no, not really.
What about you?
I went to first grade in Herculaneum for about 6 months, or just half of the year. I had eye trouble and I had to miss half of the grade. And then I went to Peebly after that.
I attended Peebly Elementary School all 8 years.
So, Wally or Richard, do you remember any special events, local or national, that happened while you were in elementary school?
Second World War.
Not in elementary school.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was.
Listen,
Always
always
in 44. 40, 40.
I remember the elementary school.
Army stuff, and they would make it for life jackets and that, elementary school. And the school would let us out, take us up there, and we went and gathered up that while I was in grade school. And paper drives and all that, we go out and gathered up newspapers and stuff like that for the drive during the Second World War.
Okay, do you recall any of your teachers or principals from high school? Like anybody that stood out to you?
Well, we had a superintendent by the name of Roy Taylor, and I remember a couple of the principals. One of them was named Stinson, and I can't remember any of the others.
Mr. Taylor was my principal superintendent too. And Mrs. Crawford, Mrs. I can't come up with it right now. Kraft, Mrs. Kraft was a study hall teacher. And Mrs. Robinson, she taught my mother basketball. My mother played basketball in the girls' team, and Mrs. Robinson was still there. And then one time our coach, basketball coach, had to leave for a couple of days for some reason or another, and Mrs. Robinson come in there and took over the basketball team while he was gone.
I remember Mr. Taylor, he was superintendent, and Mr. Thompson was principal. Miss Reese taught history, Miss Morlock taught bookkeeping, and Miss Crawford, she taught study hall, and that's about all I can remember right now.
Do you remember any events, like local or national, that happened when you were in high school?
Well, of course, the wars, I remember them. Of course, I was a veteran of World War II, and then there was a Korean War, and then Vietnamese War. I remember those. That's about all I remember of special events. I don't know specifically what you had in mind, but
Well, when I was in school there, the Second World, like I say, the Second World War, and there were things like that. And then after I got out of school, I was drafted. I was sent to Korea and back, and But I saw Pearl Harbor because I took my basic training in Schofield Barracks in Hawaii. And I saw Pearl Harbor down there where the ship was sunk there.
Well, we had ration stamps during the war where sugar was rationed and gasoline was rationed and those things were rationed, and we could only get so much a month. And that was sort of a special event, I would think.
I don't recall any while I was in high school. Most of the national events occurred after I was in high school, I remember.
What type of activities did you participate while you were in high school?
Yeah, repeat that, please.
What type of activities, like sports, like basketball?
Well, I was too little for sports except track. And I ran track, and then I was in, we had some, in dramatics, we had a junior play and the senior play, and I was active in that. And that's most of my activity, except, like I said, track. I ran the mile in track. So that's about all I can remember about that.
Okay, I played all three sports, football, basketball, and track. And I was on the first football team that they had here in '46. And my grandson, when they had the 50th year of football, he was a senior here, and he was on the football team then, at that time.
I didn't participate in any organizations or clubs or anything like that while I was in high school.
Do you remember any?
Do you remember any of the individuals that were involved in these clubs or organizations? Like any standout athletes or any of the coaches?
Outside of high school, well, we had some organizations that would benefit the town. We had the Herculaneum Association to better the town. We also had a committee to get infrastructure like sewers and things of that sort.
Oh, yeah. Did you participate in any of the clubs outside of school?
Well, I joined the fire department over here, and I was in the Boy Scouts and stuff like that when I was smaller. And but outside of that,
No, I didn't participate in any.
Yeah, I can remember. I was in the Boy Scouts and I helped organize the Little League when we first had a Little League in town. And, I remember that.
I used to coach a little league down here too.
So, as adults, have you participated in any civil or social organizations or been involved in any elected positions in Herculaneum?
Yes, I was on the city council and participated in that. I was an alderman and I was on committees from the city and for a while, but I hadn't been active lately.
I was on the school board in Peebly over there when they voted to go to school with Herky, go in with Herky. Because at that time, Peebly had their school and Herky had theirs. But I was on the school board whenever they done that.
Did Peebly have a high school back then too?
No, Peebly didn't have a high school.
Never
So
had.
the kids just came over to Herky
Oh,
High
they come to
School.
Herky. When I went to school here, kids were coming from High Ridge, House Springs, Fenton, all up in there, come on school buses.
They all come to Herky.
And they all come to school here.
You had more students from out of town than you had in town.
Yeah.
Did you attend church at Herculaneum?
No, I did. I attended Catholic church in Herculaneum.
Where did you go to church?
Where did I go to church? Well, I went to church at the Assembly of God and the Methodist Church.
I went to church in the Methodist church up here in Herculaneum when I went to school here, and I went to church the day that the school burned. I was there at church.
Do you recall any of the clergy who worked at the church or who served at the church that you went to?
I can't remember their names.
Father Holly was here
Oh.
when we moved to
Mr.
Turkey.
Go ahead.
No, excuse me, you go on.
Mr. Taylor was the superintendent of the church over there at that time too. Also.
And Mr. Crow.
So
Mr. Crow was superintendent for a while, wasn't he?
he wasn't there long.
Do you remember any special events or special activities your church put on?
No.
Oh, they'd have a Halloween party and a spring picnic and maybe an ice cream social once in a while, but that's what it amounted to.
Yeah, we had picnics in the summer, yes. And we'd play bingo and have, sometimes I have the music.
When you were growing up, did you remember any businesses being in Herky?
Well, there was a grocery store down there in Herky that was owned by St. Joe Led. And
Well,
then
earlier on, there was a dry goods store and a bank and a drugstore and about 5 taverns.
Do you remember the names?
We had
of
plenty
any
of
these?
taverns.
Do you remember the names of any of the businesses?
Oh, let's see. Waxes was the name of the dry goods store, and Herky Drug was the name of the drugstore. Guy by the name of Dormeyer was the proprietor of that years ago. And, let's see. The old cash and carry store that belonged to the company. They ran the store, and most of their employees were customers.
There
What
was
about you, Mr.
Lovely.
Huddleston?
Go ahead.
go ahead.
There was Lupke's store,
Yeah.
grocery store in Herculaneum, and I know
Yeah.
they lived here. And of course, the cash and carry or the company store. And Watts had a grocery. And that's about the most of them I can remember.
There was a hardware store too. Coleman had it. Remember up there on the hill?
There was a bakery too. What was that bakery?
Bakery,
Niece's
Niece's
Bakery.
Bakery.
Niece's Bakery.
Dugan's
Garage,
automobile
Plymouth.
dealership. He had a Dodge automobile dealership.
Who do you consider influential and individuals and community leaders during when you lived in Herky?
I remember, I think Donald Stotler he got the Herculaneum reincorporated or something like that. I don't know, my memory serves me right. I think like he had a lot to do with that. That's
Yeah, he got more things going pretty good.
Do you remember any colorful characters or individuals that everyone knew, such as class clowns?
Don Stock.
Any colorful characters?
Who Douglas? Everybody had a nickname in Herculaneum. Sometimes they'd run for office. You'd have to stop and think, well, who the devil is that? You didn't mention his nickname, so you'd have to. But everybody had a nickname. There was.
Do you remember any names of the towns around in Herky?
Well, section Concrete Town, Dead Man's Hollow. That's
Well, there's another one, but I'm not gonna say it.
okay. Yeah, I lived in Concrete Town.
Where the
Yeah,
colored
yeah,
folks
sure.
lived. That was a section of town where we weren't integrated. At that time, eventually it was, but
Do you recall any man-made or natural disasters that affected the city of Herculaneum? Like our Christmas Day of 1947, where the fire destroyed the public school?
Yep. I remember that, because I was in school.
I remember it, but I wasn't living in Herky that time. But my
man-made.
father-in-law and mother-in-law lived in Herky.
Man-made disasters.
So which building was that? Which was that the building that's over here?
This building right here, front door.
How long did you guys get out of school?
We didn't miss a day for the school burnt because they had everything set up. We went to classes down at the library there in Herky. And right out here was the cafeteria. We went to classes in that. And they also had home economics classes. They had different classes over there. And there was a little thing down on the track where you stored equipment. We had some classes in there. So we didn't miss any school at all. They had everything set up at the time.
They had classes in some of the churches, and then there was a big building downtown called the KP Hall. They had classes there. They went right on. They didn't stop.
Where did you guys hang out with friends when you were growing up in Herky?
One show. And
When I was a kid, I had to hang out at home, but later on, there was a hamburger joint up on Main Street, and in the taverns, of course, where some of us hung out, got in a lot of trouble. But that was about the extent of it. There weren't too many places where we could have any kind of activity. And we were all the same, everybody was the same.
What sort of activities did you and your friends do when you were growing up?
Pardon?
What sort of activities? Like, did you guys go out and play sports and stuff? Or?
I used to caddy at the golf course, and they had a golf course out here. And they had a theater we could go to part of the time. But,
Well, I lived over there at Riverside at the time, and I used to go down to Peebly, and we would play softball down there. And Butch Rapp used to bring a baseball from St. Louis Cardinals player, come down there, and he'd get out there and play with us a little bit. But they were sitting there playing cards one time, and Fat Rapp wasn't ready to go home yet, and that baseball player was. And somebody come in there where they were playing cards and told him, said, "Hey, that guy you brought down here, that ball player, he's down at Festus hitchhiking south." So he had to leave his game and go down there and get him, take him back to St. Louis. But stuff like that, there wasn't much to do. We'd get together, a bunch of us, and play softball, or we'd walk down the tracks and go down to the creek and go swimming.
I didn't grow up in Herky. I wasn't here in my teens.
we had to make our own entertainment. There wasn't any organized groups of any kind where we could do it, so we made our own.
But I know what I did, but I wasn't here. I grew up in Herky. We went ice skating in the wintertime. Went swimming in Sandy Creek in summertime. But that wasn't while I was living in Herky, but before.
So, any special memories of Mississippi River or Joachim Creek?
Remember the Joachim Creek flooding a lot.
Oh, Joachim Creek, yeah. Yeah. I remember when I was getting out the golf course, me and two of my friends was coming home one day, and they had a brand new pair of shoes. And shoes was hard to get those days. And they was throwing my shoe in the creek and diving in after it, and we lost it. You can almost tell what happened when I got home. So, that was kind of a special event for me.
So it's almost like, you got a brand new pair of pants on, and Mom said, "No, don't get those dirty." Kind of like that, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, the Mississippi River down there, they had a ferry that used to dock down there and go across into Illinois. And I remember one time there was a car come off of that, and they had a diver had to go down and hook stuff up to get that car up out of the river. I remember that.
Yeah, they used to have a boat ramp down there, and they did a lot of boating and that for a while, but that finally left out so much vandalism and all that they had to quit it.
Where did you go shopping when you were growing up in Herky?
Well, we used to go to the drugstore down there, would shop stuff there. They had other things than just for the drugstore. And you had the company store there, the groceries. Went in there all the time a lot to get groceries. Other than that, well, you went to St. Louis.
I didn't do any shopping in Herculaneum. I didn't own my own car either.
Herb, did you remember any places where you went shopping?
Mostly we had to shop in Festus and Crystal. There wasn't much shopping here in town, and like you said, the drugstore and a couple grocery stores. And that one hardware store that they didn't stay in business very long though.
Did you guys have your own car?
Pardon?
Did you guys have your own car, like your family?
Oh no. No, we walked everywhere. We went on a bicycle. We didn't have a car.
No. We didn't have a grandfather. I lived with my grandfather, and he had a car, but he had to work in St. Louis, and the car went with him. I didn't own a car until I was out of school and got enough money to start one, buy one.
Yeah, I didn't have a car or anything in school, not until after I got married. That was years later, to have a car.
I just bought my car, and I think five months later, they put me in the Army. So I didn't get to go with. He didn't get to go with me.
Do you have any special memories of the following? I had just a long list, so you're gonna have to bear with me. At the Herculaneum Bowling Alley, the KP Hall, the Veneta Theater, I believe that's how it's pronounced, the Campus Inn, Teen Town, the high school co-op store, the school carnivals, Herculaneum annual homecoming, and etc. Yeah.
Well, I remember the bowling alley because it set pins there. And KP Hall, we used to have picnics out in the area of the lawn of KP Hall. And of course the theater, and Campus Inn was right up the street here. And we had a school carnival every year, and then they had the homecoming football teams after that. So
I don't have any memory of any of those.
KP Hall, and that, I remember that, and theater. We used to go to the show. We used to walk from Peebly over to Herky there to go to school. We'd get a bunch of kids together, and we'd walk over and go to the show.
Do you have any memories of when the public schools were integrated?
When I was out of school.
I was out of school also. But I remember when I was playing basketball there in the 40s, the kids from the, what was the, Herky, the black kids come to school, they came in there and sat and watched us play basketball. They didn't keep them from it or anything.
every time we played Crystal City, there was a basketball game and a fight after. I remember that. We really had a time with Crystal City.
Did any of you serve in the military, the army, or?
Yeah, I was in the Army in World War II. Spent 2 years in there. I didn't see any foreign service. I stayed here in the States, but that was as far as my Army career was concerned.
I was in the Army. I was sent to Schofield Barracks, Hawaii for 16 weeks of basic. Then I went straight to Korea. And after basic, they sent me to Indiana, given basic, and I got out in 21 months because I had enough points when I was in the service there. I stayed on up there in Korea, was on the comp, was in North Korea all the time I was there. So.
I was in the service. I went in March '43 and went to basic training. Then in October I was shipped overseas. I went on a steamer. I think at one time it was the Empress of Scotland. They changed the name. No, it was Empress of Japan, but they changed it to the Empress of Scotland. We went over to Africa, and then we went from Casablanca to over to Oran on 48 rail cars. They carried 40 men or 8 horses. When we got to Oran, we was there for, to about end of October or something like that. And we went to Naples, Italy. Naples, Italy, I went to the Battle of the Rapido River crossing there. Was one of the, I think, before Mount Casino, before Casino. And that was from October up until January. We were in service there. And I was captured by the Germans in January, the latter part of January, until they shipped me off to Germany, and that was...
Tyler Winehouse to the front office, please. Tyler Winehouse to the front office.
And I was they were sent out to a village where I had to work with the Germans there, helping out with the farm work. And when the Russians, back in 1944, were getting close to where we were, why they moved us back towards the American lines. And we got back to the American lines. I think we started marching in February. It was April 12th, we were liberated. One in Germany in charge of us, he surrendered to the Allies, and we got back. I remember got back with the American forces. It was April the 12th, and that was the day President Roosevelt died. That's the first time we had got any news of that and everything like that. So, and then I came back and was put on 60-day leave. And then I went down, was examined down in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and they sent me out to Fort Arbor, California. I started training for the war with Germany was over when I was coming back on the boat. And then while I was training to go make the invasion of Japan, well, the war in Japan ended. So about November of 44, I got out on points like that. I'd have enough points. You gather points by being overseas and the length of time you were in. And so I got out in November of 44.
What's your fondest memory of growing up in Herculaneum?
Oh, I think it was the friendliness and camaraderie that everyone had. Everybody was friendly towards each other, and we greeted strangers and didn't make any problems. I think that was my best memory of it.
Well, like I say, I didn't grow up that long in Herculaneum. But I didn't have any problems. Everything was fine. I used to walk from back up here all the way downtown when I was 6 years old, and nobody bothered you. You'd take off and walk down through there.
I didn't grow up in Herky, but my children did. It was always a safe place for kids to grow up to back then.
In summary, how would you sum up your life in Herculaneum, what you did live?
How would I sum it up?
Yeah.
Well, other than the so-called pollution problem, it was a good place to raise a family, raise your children, and go to school. And I enjoyed living here. You were, like I said a while ago, all your neighbors, you were all friendly with each other, and that's my memories of it.
That was pretty well. The neighbors up there was all good and friendly and everything, and helped you if you had any problems and all that.
Yeah, when I raised my family here in Herky, and I thought it was always a good place. The neighbors were friendly. You knew practically everybody in town. And one thing, when I bought a home here in Herculaneum, the water was free. And then now it's really costly, even in Herculaneum or Festus or any place like that.
That's all we have for today.
I just go, do any of you remember when the river froze?
Oh, yeah,
And, so, I mean, I've been told people walk from here to Illinois. I
yeah.
assume
You could
that's
walk
true.
all the way across the river.
I can never remember in my lifetime, I lived over in Peabody, but I know, I think my sister, one of the neighbor girls, got in trouble for skating on it.
Yeah, that was my mother. That was my mother that he's talking about. Her and Liz Crow went down to the river and they walked across it, and they got caught, and they got spanked when they got home.
Do you recall what year that was? I'm thinking it's in the mid-30s.
I'm talking about,
Probably,
I'm
yeah.
not sure, but, you know.
well, it had to be before that because I was born in 1930, and I don't know if they would done that when they were.
You also mentioned the ferry.
Yeah.
That operated, I think, for about 10 years, maybe 8 years.
Yeah, that, it
Can
ran
you say something
about,
about that, or?
it ran about 10 years, I think.
And I don't remember how big it was, but how much would it carry?
It may be 6 cars on about it. It wasn't that big.
Yeah, I think they carried about 6 cars. Made a trip every hour, I think.
Is that what it was, about every hour?
Yeah.
Okay. And another thing that's, the St. Joe whistle, do you recall when that started? Was that a wartime?
It was going before I went to work there. It went for a long time.
I recall it, you know, blowing
Well,
several times a day, but I don't know when it really, when they started using that whistle.
No, I don't
If
know.
anybody knew that.
Well, I think they started using it to wake the people up. Had to go to work. And they blew it at 7 o'clock, and 12 o'clock, and 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and 11 o'clock at night.
I think it pretty much went along with the shift changes, wasn't it? Pretty
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
what it
Yeah, that's what
was.
they did. They went along with the shift changes.
I know growing up, you know, much later, we always knew what time it was.
Yeah.
If you just would listen for the whistle, you had a pretty good idea.
When we'd
If
hear
you
the
had to get
whistle,
home or
when
it
we'd
was
hear
3
the-
o'clock.
when we'd hear the whistle, you better take off for home, because you're supposed to be there.
And you also, you referred to the theater. Do you have any idea when that closed?
The Veneta Theater? Oh,
As best I could figure out, it was the early 1950s. But
was
you
it,
talked about going to it.
was it in the 50s?
Yeah, it was open in the early 1951. That's the last thing I could ever find,
I
like
thought
when
it
they advertised.
I thought it was the early 60s, but
No, oh, the whole time I was growing up, it was basically an abandoned
yeah.
building up there that you just kind of, you didn't know what went on, you know, in there.
Well, 51, 52, I was in service, so.
And, I read somewhere, I think we're having people do these family histories, and somebody referred to it in there where their mother was prominent in getting it shut down for trying to show our movies. And I thought that was kind of,
Whose mother?
I was trying to think whose it was I read, but it was a group of people that were objecting to the type of movies they were trying to show. I don't know what the movie was, or,
Yeah.
or
I think it was-
I don't know how big a deal it was, but I just thought that was kind of.
I don't remember that, but
Well, I remember the Joachim Creek freezing over, and the kids had bonfires on it. There's some guy who drove his car out on the ice.
Dave Bruin. Dave Bruin did that. Then everybody had to push it up on the bank to get it back up out of there. They couldn't get back up off of the creek.
Yeah, several people that we've interviewed have talked about the ice skating on the
Yeah.
creek.
ice skating on the creek, oh,
It
yeah.
seemed to be a
Yeah.
big deal. And I guess even when I was, junior high, maybe even high school, people were still doing it, but
Yeah.
not like, back before that, there's more things to do besides ice skating, but it seemed to be a real important thing for kids growing up in the 40s and 50s to go down there and do that.
Yeah, they'd build a big bonfire, get warm by it, and you go out there and skate for a while, and then go warm up by the fire, and then go skate again.
I guess the weather had to be so much,
David
so much
Brown had
colder,
a-
I guess,
Yeah.
in the winter, huh? Because
Well,
the thing don't even freeze.
I can remember when I was growing up that from the time of Christmas to the first of the year, you always ice skated on the creek for the whole week. And,
David Brun had an old car we took down there on the creek
Yeah.
and pushed it around. We'd skate up to Orion and back. Quite a time.
Herb, I can't believe you didn't mention the fire department.
Oh,
You've been
God,
on there
yeah.
50 some odd years.
I was sorry, I didn't mention the fire department. Well, and after the school burned, they had an organization here in town, the VFW, and they got interested in forming a fire department, and their commander, Tom Robart, got a few people together and a committee, and they formed a preliminary fire department, and then they would only let VFW members join for a little while, but after that, they opened it up, and I got into it in 1952, and I think I'm the only living member now that help organize it, and now we have a pretty modern fire department.
So there was no fire department when the school burned down?
No,
No organized fire
no,
department?
1951 is when we organized the fire department. We started out with getting a resuscitator for heart patients, and we went door to door and collected money for that. And then after we did that, we purchased an old Monarch pumper from the city of St. Louis, and we used that for quite some time. We had a firehouse in an old church basement, and up here on Main Street, And then we finally got to where we could, and Bill Run helped us out, or St. Joe at that time, helped us out, and we bought a new pumper. And from then on, we did fairly well. And right now we have a pretty modern fire department.
Over where the police station sits now, there used to be a big warehouse type building there, wasn't there? At one time, like there's a couple trailers, house trailers there, and there was like an old warehouse close to where the police station sits, right there in that little, you guys remember that one? You
We're
remember
talking
what that
about
was?
up on Main Street,
Close to Main
face
Street.
face
right
still
there.
run.
Yeah, there was like a big like an old warehouse, like an abandoned.
You're talking
it would have
about
been
Festus?
abandoned in like, no,
You're talking about over Festus?
no, here,
he's
ours,
talking about-
our
Oh,
police station right up the,
You're
right there.
behind City Hall, up on Main Street, that's where the
Okay.
library, the theater,
There's a
the
old
bakery,
Dugan's
Dugan Garage.
garage had there.
I
and
think
then-
what you're talking about is what used to be the Levy Building,
yeah.
which became like a warehouse, and there was a Ponderosa CV club in there, they held dances. I think that's probably what you're referring to.
There was a tavern there.
Could be, because I can remember, like, because I grew up, the Mises, we lived in a house trailer, and the Mises lived in he lived in a house trailer right there, whenever I was probably 2 or 3, and I can remember throwing rocks through that old building, through the windows. It was vacant that time, that would have been 69.
Well, Macy's had that bakery there, right up there.
There was a trailer that sat down in the hill, sort of.
Yeah, but there was like 2 of them that were flooded.
Right. I think that was at the north end of, what would there, like where Butter Simpson had his tavern, and
Yeah.
I think that's the area you're talking
Yeah, I
about.
just remember throwing rocks through that old building, and I can remember kind of where it was at, but I didn't know what.
Well, that's why I say, growing up, I don't remember the theater ever being open. It was just there, you could tell it was a theater, the seating was in there, the projectors were there. It's just like they just, one day shut the doors and that was it.
Yeah.
And I can remember, being told not to go in there,
Yeah.
because there were bums in there. I don't know if there ever was, or,
We used to hang out up there at Dugan's garage. Summertime and then
well, when Frank and John Dugan were here, they talked about that building, how
yeah.
filthy, dirty, and oily it was.
Man, it was something.
And and Butch here asked about the, before the school, when the school burned, there was no fire department, but they did have hose carts
Yeah.
located at different points in town. One of them was right up here where the front of the theater sets
Yeah.
down, and one was over here by where they're doing the new Soup's office on Hill Street. And they would, those were hose carts that could be hooked to hydrants,
Yeah.
but they had to be pulled.
Somebody had to pull.
And all you had was line pressure
There was-
on your hoses, so you didn't have much, sometimes you had pretty good pressure, depend on what part of town you was in.
And I think part of the problem, from what I've been told on the school fire, because it was a holiday, the schools were shut down, the water pressure had been reduced
Yeah.
pretty drastic to this area, because school was not in session. And
Festus brought their pumper up here, but by the time they got up here with it was all, pretty well all gutted, and, it didn't do much good.
Well, they had some kind of fire department or something down in St. Joe years and years ago. Because I remember, I don't remember the fire, but our house caught on fire over at Riverside. And there was a fire hydrant out across the road from our house. And it was supplied by Herculaneum, by St. Joe. And it went all the way down to the railroad station down there at Riverside. And our house caught on fire, and I think my dad was the operator down there, railroad telegrapher, so forth like that. He brought some hose up, was running it across the road, and about had the fire under control. Here comes the fire truck from St. Joe, or what the story I heard when I was little, maybe 2 or 3 years old or something like that he ran over that hose and it busted. So there was some kind of fire.
I think, well, I mean, from what I know, I think all they had was those hose carts that they would pull with no-run trucks.
Yeah.
Maybe that was
I
it.
think that's probably what it
Was
was.
the door on?
Did anybody
wasn't
ever
it-
mention at one time that Herky was a county seat?
That's been, yeah, it's been mentioned several
It
times.
used to be the county seat.
They skipped over the one question. I don't know if they skipped over, but maybe you skipped over it when you were answering it. On that colorful character one and the important people in town. I know you mentioned like Roy Taylor. I think whoever the superintendent of schools was back, maybe not so much now, but back then they were pretty influential in the town. And Doc Sin was influential because he was pretty much the doctor to just about everybody in town. He was a company doctor and served on the school board. But do you recall like Bob Evans? Was he not also pretty big in town?
He had a newspaper, didn't he, Evans?
Yeah, Bob Evans had the newspaper distributorship, and he also had this B&L supply store
Right.
downtown.
So I think some of the people probably,
Yeah,
when you were, well, not growing up so much, but even when you were older, it was like a lot of the business owners and the doctors, the school board members. But it seems to me like what I remember, Roy Taylor is somebody I heard of when I was in grade school. Of course, he retired, I think, in the late 50s, so I wasn't in school real long, but I just remember hearing about him for...
well, they didn't have principals then, all they had was a superintendent. And then later on, they started having principals, but...
He was, from everything I can figure, he was here about 34 years, which is unheard of
Yeah,
today for a superintendent, you know, if you get 3 years, you're
I can remember one time there, the class I was in, Mr. Taylor was teaching. And he took us up to Jeff City, so we got up there and see the Capitol and everything. And we got over here to Peebly on the bus, and he took a cigar out. And the driver used to live right up here. He says, I don't let anybody smoke on my bus. He said, I'm not gonna smoke it. He said, okay. But he chewed on that cigar until we got to Jeff City. And when he got out the door, he was the first one out the door and he lit it. But we all got a kick out of that about the school driver saying, hey, nobody smokes on my bus. And I forget, remember, he lived right up here.
I found it interesting. You played on the first football team.
Yeah.
Because I coach football here now, so was that a pretty big deal, the first football team? I mean, was the
Oh,
school
yeah.
body pretty excited about it, and the town population and everything? I've seen the old pictures, you know, of the team. We have no picture, no photograph downstairs, you know, the team itself, but you know, that's kind of neat, I think. And they built all this, I guess, just for the track and the football.
The first year we had football, we had no lights. And until the second year, they started getting lights. And we used to have practice a lot of times, and we was lucky if we had 15 to 20 guys show up for practice. We had to have these little dummies set us up there to block.
They just show up if they want to, and not if they did.
I think some of the guys just wanted to say that they were on the team.
Yeah.
They didn't want to go play.
It wasn't none of it.
Was there a problem with the kids that came from north of here? Was that a problem with practice, or
No.
did they participate in the
Well, I don't
football?
think they had much participation in the football, did they?
Yeah,
I don't
they
know,
did.
because football wasn't there when I went to high school.
Well, my senior year, I was co-captain, and Bob Yoakum was from Farmington, what is it up there, Fenton. And he was co-captain.
Well, it's kind of interesting because I had talked to Bob Yoakum in the last year. There's an alumni group, I don't know if anybody really knows that. There's an alumni group that meets every third Monday, and the Denny's in Arnold. I don't know what they meet in Arnold, but it's a lot of these people that
Lived up there.
from that era. And Bob Yoakum is somebody I actually
Did you know he's passed away?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Did it fairly recently, or?
Well, it's been a couple years ago.
Okay, well, maybe this is a sister then. He had a sister named Irene,
Irene.
or
Who's that?
is she over?
His brother, Jim,
Maybe that's it. Well, I've talked to
I
the
think-
in the last year.
Imogene was his wife, and Irene was probably Bob's wife.
Okay.
Now, both of them played football.
That was Bob and Jim and,
Yeah.
Who were some of the other people on that team? And who was the coach?
one of them lives in Hawaii now.
Brewer was the first coach. Bill Brewer was the first coach, and we had Gene Finney and Roy Maupin, Slinger Lee Reese, and Harold Pagey, myself, Pete Baker, and Eugene Richer, and Dave Bruin.
I actually heard of a lot of those.
Oh, we were characters.
What was your record that year?
We won one.
Who'd you beat?
We beat Festus. We
That's
played
all that matters.
the first game, the year that we played each team twice. We went to Festus and beat them. They come up here the same year and beat us. So
Who else had a football team around there?
Festus, Cristo, and Farmington. DeSoto,
Was that the Mineral Area Conference?
Middle Area Conference.
Okay, so you probably had St. John maybe, or Fredericktown?
St. Jan, we played St. Jan, played Valley High. And
That was kind of the conference for many years.
Yeah.
I know when I was at school, it was late when they started kind of basically the Jefferson County Conference, but prior to that it was the Mineral Area.
yeah,
And you said you were also in track, the Mineral Area relays.
yeah.
Do you recall when that started?
Oh, it started before us.
Always had a good track team.
I mean, and Butch just said something about the stadium out here. The stadium was actually built for track
Yeah.
back in, during the WPA,
Yeah,
WPA built.
several years before the football, became part of it.
Yeah.
Most people think of it as a football field, but it really was a
Long time.
track and field.
Yeah.
well, my freshman year, we didn't have football, and I was running track right out there. And
And did they have the mineral area relays when you were in school? When you were running track, did they have the mineral area relay?
I don't think so. I think, we ran against a few schools, but I don't think there was an organized, district. I think it was just, individual teams, but,
Really, there weren't many schools.
Huh?
I said there weren't many high schools in the
no,
county.
there weren't many high schools.
In the
Well-
40s, even into the 50s.
Right. And it was,
in the middle area relays, they come up from Flat River, St. Jan, and some teams down there.
That used to be a huge track meet. I don't know how big it is now, but it's, when I was in school in the late 60s, I mean, it was 37, 38, it went for 2 days.
Even up through the 80s?
Yeah, I mean, it was,
Well,
Big
when I was,
deal.
we made it in one day when I was there. Because over here on the field over here, they throwed discus and shot and stuff like that. Then they had the discus and shot over here on there too.
do any of you recall in what's now the practice field out here in front of the school was a lake? You recall that ever being a lake?
I remember baseball field.
Baseball field, yeah.
yeah, it was a baseball field, but I don't remember being a track field.
And I know, no, not a track, a lake.
Oh, a lake?
I don't know when that was, but I mean, obviously it's shaped like a lake. But
No, I don't recall it being a lake.
the baseball field was
Yeah.
Yeah.
a big thing. And does anybody recall the baseball fields that used to be down basically where the Little League fields are now?
Oh, yeah, I recall that.
Remember
Yeah.
what that was called, or did it have a name, or?
Yeah, it had a name, but I can't remember.
It's a pretty
It
good
is,
sized
huh?
field. Pretty good sized field, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a pretty good baseball field, and they had some guys here in town that's pretty good baseball players. And after the regular baseball season was over, some of them knew some of those Cardinals and Browns, and they'd pick up a few of those guys and come down here and play. And boy, they'd beat him. Old Turk Thomas, man, he was a heck of a pitcher.
There was and I don't know who mentions, I guess, you mentioned about Cardinal player
Yeah.
who came down. There's and I forget which year it is, but one of the high school yearbooks, there's a photo of the team in there with this guy from the Cardinals, and I'm going to say late 40s, early 50s.
He was a first baseman.
I'm not sure who it was. There was a first baseman around, Ray
He was a
Sanders.
first baseman.
Ray Sanders.
Yeah.
Sanders.
Sanders.
Yeah.
was.
He married a girl from up here on Crystal Heights.
Right, because I think he was the one.
Yeah, that's the one that used to hang out with Butch Rat, or with Fat Rat.
Fat Rat.
And I think eventually he ended up working over here at Teamsters
Yeah.
with some, I mean,
Fat-
again, you're talking a guy from the 40s, but,
Fat Rat had lived in Peebly there for a while, and relatives there, and he would come down. He lived in St. Louis, and he was a Kroger salesman, I think it was. And he'd come down there on the weekends, and he always wanted to play ball. And we'd get together, a bunch of us get up there and go up there and play ball there at the grade school. And he brought this Sanders down there.
Those nicknames killed him, man. Fat Rat.
yeah, can you throw some nicknames out there that you recall? Because that was one of the things I just wanted to, when they ask you about characters in town.
Well, Slinger Reese.
There we go.
And Roy Moppin was,
What was that old guy's name? I can't think of his name. He was a town drunk. I can't think of his name now.
Wasn't
He
Gar,
was-
was it?
Huh?
Wasn't Gar.
No, it wasn't Gar.
Like I've always heard names over the years, and never knew who these people were, but I always heard like Preacher White and
yeah.
Uncle
He ran
Bill
the tavern.
White,
Yeah,
Pork Chop Manning.
Preacher White was a tavern owner.
Because nicknames aren't that, you just don't hear them like, they don't stick.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I think you said something about Hoot Douglas.
And I can't remember his brothers. He had
Tacky.
Tacky Douglas.
I mean, and from what it sounds like, everybody had nicknames and they stuck.
Oh,
And
they
like
did?
you said, if they would run for an office or something, you really didn't know who they were because you didn't know their first name. And that don't happen anymore.
Who's that?
Just any name. The one I always liked besides Pork Chop was
Pork Chops.
Doodlebug Burris. Was one I always heard. I always just thought that was kind of neat. But,
Arlo Polson had a nickname for
Yeah, I can't
everybody.
think of that.
I don't care who it was, he had a nickname for him.
yeah.
He called Dick Litton Clothespin because he was so skinny.
They called me a HUD.
But that was easy. But yeah, I mean, when we were in school, we always called Kenny Herb, Little Herb, and now I can't do that. I always refer to him as Kenny. And for years it was Herbie, and I don't know. It just seemed like characters I used to hear about were those kind of people,
I call my grandpa Foul Ball. Foul Ball.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good one.
See, that's like, you probably got the picture of my grandson when he was a senior. That was our 50th
Yeah.
reunion and that.
Yeah.
And all three of my grandsons played football.
Right. I knew David.
Yeah,
That's Sherry's kids,
yeah,
Sherry and Joe.
yeah.
My grandson played football too. He was probably played linebacker on defense and wide out on offense. She holds a couple of records.
Ryan
I was
Killian
going to
was-
play football.
Oh, Ryan?
Huh?
Ryan Killian?
Steve,
Yeah.
Greg.
Right?
Yeah,
Greg
Ryan,
Keith.
he's my grandson.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I coached him.
Pretty good football player.
Yeah, he wasn't too bad. Too bad.
Every time you'd hear about a tackle, it'd Ryan Killian.
But the kids from the north part of the county, they had to get their own way home after games and for practice until, I think it was my sophomore year, they started busing it.
Yeah, the school district itself did not have many buses to run all those routes. I've got these little booklets that the school used to put out and would have the bus routes in there and the drivers. And some of those routes were pretty long.
Well, this one driver, he worked out here as a mechanic all day at the
Johnny
shop.
Foley?
Huh?
Is that Johnny Foley? Or?
No. He was from Cedar Hill.
Okay.
And he drove the bus and take the kids back to Cedar Hill, and he'd keep the bus there at home overnight, and then bring them back the next day. And then he would stay in the school, over here at the school, working on a bus.
I do have one other question for you, and I don't know if you'll know this, but you said you graduated in '49.
Yeah.
Looking through some old school newspapers from '49, there's a little caricature in there.
What was that
of a
one?
guy named
Bus
Herky
driver's name?
Herkimer.
Herb Ficken?
Huh?
Herb Ficken?
Yeah.
Is that bus driver's name?
I don't know. What his name was?
It was just a little caricature somebody drew. It was always in the school newspaper called Herky Herkimer. You ever see that? It looked almost like a little Dennis the Menace character.
Like a little cartoon.
A little cartoon. It was always in there. It was the only year I can find it is '49. It's the only time I see it appearing. And it was always like Herky says, and it would just be little gossip type things in the newsletter or the school newspaper.
We didn't have a school paper.
And I was always kind of curious where that came from. And
Well, the school's paper didn't start till about 48, 49, something like that.
oh no, they go back into the
Really?
20s. That I've got copies of them.
Okay.
I mean, it changed format. It used to be published by there used to be a newspaper here in town. I think they used
Reavers?
yeah, the Press Times.
Yeah,
I think they used to print it, then I think the school, probably when they got
yeah.
the equipment, the offset press and all that, could, print it. And it changed formats, but it was
Well,
kind of interesting.
well,
That
Harry
Herky
Dren-
Herkimer, this is always kind of,
Harry Drennan from Peavy there, he was always an artist for the paper and all of that. If
the
any
school paper.
school paper or any of it, because
Well, I've read through there trying to find, if I could ever find out somebody got credit for that little character. And it just was always kind of interesting. But it's just that one year, and I don't know, and it was '49. Now, I do have one other question. Kindergarten, do you know when that started here? Did you attend kindergarten?
I wasn't no school kindergarten.
Well, I didn't have kindergarten when I was in school, but
So you guys started elementary school probably when, what year?
I started about 33, I think it was.
Okay.
36,
Okay, so it wasn't there then.
no.
See, the best I can figure out is in the 40s. Somewhere in the 40s, because again, looking through school newspapers,
Well,
there's reference to it. And,
Well, my daughter went to kindergarten here, and she was born in
Did
51.
Betty go to kindergarten?
Huh?
yeah,
Did
she's
Betty
same
go
age
to
as I am.
kindergarten?
And I went to
I
kindergarten.
don't think so.
And
Well, maybe she
I
did.
traced it back to the 40s, which I thought was kind of weird that they would start it during
Maybe
the
she
war.
did. She
But
came
that'd
over
been-
here.
that'd
But I
been-
don't
Kindergarten,
can't
that
pinpoint
was a
Got the
exactly.
first grade in Peabody.
And,
They didn't have one in
Real curious about that.
Well, she didn't go to kindergarten.
I just don't know.
Well, I think she might have came over here to kindergarten. I don't know. I don't remember.
Yeah, there's got to be somewhere in the early 40s. Okay, well, Herky Herkimer was something I wanted to know about.
Well,
I'll have to,
I never heard of it.
yeah, and I think it was just that 1 year, and I don't.
We've got a class reunion coming up in September. I'll have to, if I can remember it, I'll have to ask Harry about it, because he done all the drawing for everything.
Harry Drennan, you said?
Yeah.
Where's he from?
Is he still around?
Easy. He lifted weights. I tried to get him to come out for football, and he said, no, I'm not gonna hurt my fingers and I won't be able to draw. But he would play baseball, catch, but he wouldn't come out for football.
I know Butch probably knows this, but they're trying to do a plaza out here. I think I kind of mentioned that logo with the Victory Bell. And sounds like you would be, being in sports and all that, and being graduates here, they're trying to sell a brick, commemorative brick to help fund it. And they're looking for graduates. If you have any interest in that, it'll probably be appearing in the paper soon. And,
Okay.
so, or I can send you a form, but it's something they're trying to get together for next year for the bicentennial, and try to rededicate the Victory Bell and this.
Doc Sand used to come to almost all of our football games.
Yeah.
He'd be standing down there on the sidelines.
Where did that victory bell come into play at?
Well, we were talking about that before, and he confirmed what I thought. The Victory Bell, the bell sat on top of the school and fell during the fire. And then apparently it was in storage for like 15 years.
Yeah.
And then there was a football coach here, Bill Holmes, who found it. It was a bus garage used to sit over here, kind of where the parking lot is now. And being the coach, he took that bell and made it into a Victory Bell.
Okay.
Set it up out here in a.
Sits right out here now.
Yeah.
But it was in '62 when they dedicated it as a Victory Bell. And
Yeah,
I've got that news article.
If you went to a football game, and as soon as that game was over with, you better get back away from there, because them kids would run you over.
Yeah, it's still like that. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Still do it.
Yeah, it's a big scene out there. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of interesting because when I was in 7th grade, we were over in the Roy Taylor building, and we were in the room that faces the high school. So we were there in '63. So this would be like the second year of that bell. But that was always a highlight of Monday morning. Was they would ring that bell. They would ring it the night of the game, and then they would come back, Monday morning, and that was. And back then they didn't lose.
Yeah.
They didn't lose, and they won big. And I can always remember sitting there in that classroom, and we wouldn't even have class. We would just sit there and watch them ring the bell. I mean, it was however long it took, and then we went on. But that was '63, and then like I say, it was done in '62. So I think they started the school year in '62. It was early in the year when they dedicated it. And they dedicated that, and I think the school flag, which I don't know if it still exists or not, but there was big. Well, I've seen the flag. I mean, I don't know where it's at now, even now.
They used to have tubes come from the upper classes, come all the way down. Fire escapes. And we used to have to practice once in a while just to slide down that. And the teacher would have the guys go down first to help catch some of the younger ones, and that coming
Clean it out too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard some stuff that was put in there, and but, yeah, see, back then, it was pretty fun sliding down that
Them old fire escapes
You
got,
had pole barns, you could have been
them old fire escapes got a few stories.
But yeah, the Victory Bell is, I wasn't sure how much it's, do all teams do it?
I remember that bell when I was a kid.
Basketball,
Yeah, all the teams that go out. The football team rings it Friday after we win, and then basketball teams or whatever come in the next morning. Go out there and ring it.
but you're right, I can remember, like I say again, in the early '60s when they were just the powerhouse in the middle area. After the game, you knew they were going to win, so everybody congregated The bell set over here though at that time.
Yeah.
Between where all the concrete is now. And you got out of the way because the whole team was coming. And, you know, and everybody just knew it. You know, they just kind of peeled away from it, and that was the final, and then people would go home.
Yeah.
And it was neat. I mean, it was a good idea when the guy coming up with it. But the question always was, where did the bell come from? And he confirmed it today that it was on top of the school, which I always thought it was. You know, my dad had told me. So,
Well, I can remember when I was a kid, that bell, it rang every morning, around 8 o'clock. But I just lived right across the ditch here. Didn't take me long to get to school.
you know, what did one guy say that time? He had to walk to school every day. He was open plus 300 yards or 300 feet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a guy like that, and we had one guy that they talked about that dropped out of school because they took his lunch hour away from him, changed it to a half an hour.
Yeah, I forget who that was.
So they just completely dropped
Larry
out.
Hill was here. He was talking about it.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,